Hi everyone! Today we'll be talking about one of my favorite artists, as you may be able to tell by the shirt. We're talking Stevie Wonder. Now I've had the pleasure of listening to his discography for the past 2 weeks to come up with the cream of the crop. I'm calling this, undeniably, the top 10 best Stevie Wonder songs. And just for a little bit of fun, I'll have my pick for an overrated song at the end. But in the meantime, let's get to the top 10. At number 10, we have Master Blaster Jammin' from Hotter Than July. Throughout the 70s, Stevie Wonder was an unstoppable force of nature with the Midas touch. He released at least one album a year from 1967 through 1974, skipping 1975 only to drop the monumental double album Songs in the Key of Life in 1976. The final stretch of that streak accomplished an impossible hat trick, where he won the Grammys for Album of the Year for back-to-back-to-back LPs. Paul Simon famously remarked that the only reason he won in 1975 was because Stevie didn't release a record. The follow-up to Songs in the Key of Life was eagerly anticipated, and fans waited a long 3 years for Stevie to release the strange collection Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants, a largely instrumental double album that was half a soundtrack to a documentary with some oddball sound experiments and a handful of more standard melodic tunes. It was the first album in over a decade from Stevie that received mixed reviews. 1 year later, he released Hotter Than July, a return to form that was a critical and commercial smash, filled with great songs. In 1979, Stevie met Bob Marley, whose group would soon open for Wonder on tour. Master Blaster Jammin' borrows the title from one of Marley's biggest hits and a bit of that stony reggae feel, but with all due respect, it has a whole lot more funk than the Wailers. Stevie stretches out the groove, playing clavinet and Fender Rhodes. He's as socially conscious as ever, acknowledging the trouble of the times but celebrating the joys that music provides to help guide us through it all. From the disco club funk of Did I Hear You Say You Love Me to the joyous anthem Happy Birthday, Hotter Than July sees Stevie just as the title promises, still smoking. Master Blaster Jammin' is its best cut, a bumping block party that will keep you jamming until the break of dawn. At number 9, we have Superwoman from Music of My Mind. By the age of 21, Stevie Wonder had released 14 studio albums. He had literally grown up in the Motown studios. It was during those years in the Snake Pit where young Stevie would hone his craft with his tireless devotion to musicianship and his intuitive knack for organic producing and engineering. After the runaway smash of What's Going On pointed that Motown was changing to a more cutting-edge direction, Wonder signed a new contract with the label, ensuring him full creative control, and he was eager to explore. On Music of My Mind, Stevie is a true one-man band and studio whiz. Only 2 parts on the whole album feature someone else picking up an instrument. During the time, he had grown obsessed with new, modern synthesizers, and his explorations would color the album and influence his career. On Superwoman, Where Were You When I Needed You? It's really 2 distinct songs. It starts with breezy pop. The first 3.5 minutes were cut into a hit single edit, before it floats off ethereally in the spacey, synthy bridge, where it introduces the second part, itself a reworking of Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer, from his previous album, Where I'm Coming From. It's a psychedelic slow jam, where Stevie laments his Superwoman leaving and anxiously asks, "Where were you when I needed you last winter?" The radio edit was merely a tease. The album version is a stellar 8-minute epic that sets the tone for what would be a truly remarkable decade of creativity. At number 8, we have Higher Ground from Innervisions. In the early 70s, with every new album firmly under his total creative control, Stevie Wonder grew more assured in himself, willing to share his heart, soul, and visions. Wonder was raised in a devout Baptist home and is a deeply spiritual person. 3 days after the release of Innervisions, Stevie got into a car accident and wound up in a coma for 10 days. A friend would say for days no one could get through to him, and he eventually sang Higher Ground directly into Stevie's ear, and they finally saw some spark come back into his body. It would take a long recovery. Afterwards, Stevie's faith was stronger than ever. He believed, like his blindness, that this car accident was meant to be, ordained by the Almighty. He would say that while he wrote Higher Ground prior to the accident, a great force was speaking to him, making him aware of a greater purpose for his life. Higher Ground is some of the funkiest gospel ever laid to wax. Like Music of My Mind, Stevie plays all the instruments. The clavinet wah-wah slaps while he plays Moog synthesizer bass for the low end. He wrote and recorded it in 3 hours, and it sounds like a man possessed by the Holy Spirit as he preaches to believers to keep on believing and for people to keep on learning. The verse's propulsive momentum builds up to the chorus, where he thanks God for his creation and pledges to keep on trying till I reach my highest ground. On paper, it almost reads as Christian rock, but with Stevie's unwavering focus and the song's rhythmic drive, it truly transcends. At number 7, we have You Haven't Done Nothing from Fulfillingness's first finale. When a record wins a Grammy for the best album of the year, it seems kind of ridiculous to ever claim it could be underrated. But sandwiched between 2 other Album of the Year wins, Fulfillingness's first finale seems like the forgotten middle child to Innervisions and Songs in the Key of Life. Make no mistake, Triple F is every bit as magical as those 2. He spreads space gospel on Heaven is 10 zillion light years away, and gets seriously funky on Boogie On Reggae Woman, on absolute fire jamming on multiple key parts, a piano, synthesizers, and a Fender Rhodes. On You Haven't Done Nothing, Stevie filters the Superstition drum and hi-hat groove through a There's a Riot Going On digital drum machine, and then builds even more layers to the arrangement, with bright melodic horns, twinkling electric piano, and the Jackson 5 even adding understated doo-doo-ups on the bridge. The result is the funkiest political song ever in bright Technicolor. Stevie had made pointed criticism about Nixon before, notably on He's Mr. Know-It-All, but on You Haven't Done Nothing, he really lays into Tricky Dick. I mean, the title alone shares his blunt assessment. Recorded during the heart of the Watergate scandal, he would resign as president days after the song's release. The song was practically an exclamation point to the disgraced president, reminding him to not let the door hit him on the way out. While it is firmly entrenched to that moment in history, it's more than a time capsule. With Stevie's passionate vocals and one of his best horn arrangements, it's still alive and vital. At number 6, we have Ribbon in the Sky from Original Musicarium. Stevie Wonder was a master of many instruments, including being probably the best harmonica player to ever blow. And while he was definitely a trailblazer with synthesizers, he really was unmatched on the ebonies and ivories. Some of his best songs are densely layered with creative arrangements, but he could also take an unadorned piano ballad and make it extraordinary. Lately, off Hotter Than July is a wistful tone poem, brought to an emotional conclusion after a crucial key change at the end. It creates so much weight with only piano, a slight bass synthesizer accompaniment, and of course, Stevie's acrobatic vocals. Ribbon in the Sky, one of the singles off Original Musicarium, is even better. With a similarly sparse and simple palette, Stevie's vocal soars over powerful bass chords and tender treble notes. The song is basically a blueprint for slow jam R&B that artists from Babyface to Boyz II Men would base careers off of. Read out loud, the lyrics might seem trite or unexceptional, but Wonder's performance is so magnetic that he makes you believe that we can't lose with God on our side. It's so smooth that it stretches over 5 minutes, and you can't help but feel you could get lost in that world all night. It's a dynamic torch song, equally suited for slow dancing and lovemaking. Lots of people write love songs, but only the truly best can make one as romantic as Ribbon in the Sky. At number 5, we have Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours, from the album of the same name. Barely double digits, Stevie Wonder signed to Motown's sister label, Tamla, at the tender age of 11. It didn't take very long for Stevie to find success. While touring the Chitlin circuit with the Motown Revue, a live recording was made of a stop in Chicago. That evening, a rollicking version of a jazz instrumental was really cooking. The band swings hard, and Stevie's energetic call-in response and virtuoso harmonica spawned an unlikely hit. Fingertips would be Motown's second #1 pop hit, and propelled the label, while the single helped the Young Phenoms album to reach #1 on the Billboard 100, the youngest artist to ever accomplish that feat. His adolescent Motown years had several undeniable gems. For Once in My Life, Uptight, Everything's Alright, and My Cherie Amour, all which bubble with that classic Motown sound. Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours marked a turning point where Stevie deviated from the tried and true formula. Wonder had written his own songs before, but this was the first time that he also self-produced, a studio veteran already by age 20. It kicks off somewhat bizarrely with an electric sitar before that big snare hits. Stevie lets loose a pitch-perfect howl, and the tight, punchy horns storm in. The foil of singing between Stevie's excited tenor and the sassy backup vocals from the Andantes make the song's refrain irresistible. It is relentlessly upbeat in the best of ways. It's incredibly hard to pull off a happy song that's not the least bit corny. You could feel Stevie's sincerity about his devotion, and it sounds like the exuberant rush of young love. At number 7, we have Living for the City from Inner Visions. Talking Book was the album that put Stevie Wonder at the top of every marquee, but it was Inner Visions where Stevie turned into an icon. Since Music of My Mind, he was in complete control in the studio, and he kept perfecting his craft and really blossoming as a writer. On Talking Book, he expresses his love, unconcerned with genre labels. On Inner Visions, he expanded his gaze, examining the pitfalls of humanity and society at large. On the opener, Too High, he sings of drug abuse. On Visions, he muses if peace is even realistic, or if he's simply dreaming. Living in the City is the album's true heart, a detailed story of a young black man from Mississippi, where racial discrimination is rampant. He struggles to find work, so he migrates to New York City for a fresh start. The song's spoken bridge leads him on a disastrous path, as he is framed for a crime, harshly arrested, promptly convicted and imprisoned, and ends up serving 10 years on a wrongful rap. It's the history of systematic oppression boiled down to one catchy song. It's no surprise that the single version cuts out before that bridge. It gets real heavy. The music, however, is insistent and driving. Even after the bridge, he preaches optimism. Hope you hear inside my voice of sorrow, and it motivates you to make a better tomorrow. It grounds inequality and struggle in an unflinchingly honest way, and still manages to find hope and dedication despite all the hardships. Inner Visions was where Stevie found the courage to let his words speak as loudly as his music. Living in the City is its crowning centerpiece. At number 3, we have Sir Duke from Songs in the Key of Life. You might think that after back-to-back Grammy wins for Album of the Year, that Stevie would have been content to keep his hot streak going. But he was so fed up with the US government in 1975 that he was seriously considering leaving the country, quitting music altogether, and moving to Ghana to work with disabled children. It was so serious that a farewell concert was even planned. However, money talks, and Motown persuaded him to stay for a cool $37 million deal, worth upwards of $200 million today, the largest deal of any recording artist at the time. Let's be real though, if anything, he was still underpaid. After taking time off to recharge, Stevie came back rejuvenated and reinvigorated, creating what most considered to be his best album, the sprawling double LP, Songs in the Key of Life. Nearly every song is top-tier Stevie. Sir Duke is Wonder at his most exuberant. The inventive horn melody that nods to Duke Ellington and Count Basie bobs and weaves, swinging with gusto. It's an irresistible earworm of a hook. His enthusiasm for his musical idols can't be restrained, and you can hear his love in the unstoppable groove. You can feel it all over. It jams on the appreciation of the musical visionaries who inspired him, and invites listeners to join in on the magic that music can bring into our lives. Sir Duke is jazz, funk, and pop all rolled up in one marvelous, unforgettable ode to music, and it's definitely one of Stevie's finest works. Number 2, we have Superstition from Talking Book. Such a stone cold funky jam. It's really hard not to rank it number 1. But what can I say? Stevie is just that good. The song was such an infectious hit at the time that he played it on Sesame Street. Even Grover could dig that groove. Those sure were some lucky kids on the set that day. Stevie had been playing nearly all instruments on his albums, except for guitar parts, where he would have other aces play. He was a fan of Jeff Beck, formerly of the Yardbirds, and invited him to take part in the Talking Book sessions. One day, Beck was messing around behind the drum kit, and he kicked into the iconic funky drum intro. Wonder told him to keep it going, and pretty much wrote all of Superstition on the spot, tapping into that bewitching rhythm and creating a total barn burner. Originally, Beck was going to release his version for the song with the new group he had formed. But after their debut was delayed, Stevie put out his killer original, and it would be his first number 1 pop hit since Fingertips, 10 years earlier. That in-the-pocket simple snare and hi-hat break set the stage for Stevie's scorching clavinet. Rarely utilized as a keyboard, probably because using one really just reminds you of this classic. Yet another fire-breathing, intricate horn arrangement keeps the feel lively, carrying the jam like the dopest marching band fight song. On Superstition, after he heard that opening drum loop, Stevie conjured hard-hitting mystical voodoo, channeling divine spirits to warn of negative juju and to funk on a whole nother level. At number 1, we have As from Songs in the Key of Life. As is really as close as music gets to perfection. The single cuts it short after 3.5 minutes, while the full version glides over 7 minutes. The groove is so organic that it could stretch out infinitely, existing outside time itself. I could imagine it would be the perfect accompaniment to transitioning to another plane of existence. As is an incredibly deep love song, pledging one's devotion eternally, loving you always, until the day that you are me and I am you. After Stevie's auto accident, some friends claimed he gained ESP, attuned to a psychic sixth sense. In As, he beautifully captures love in many forms. Love for his partner, love for the world, love for God, and invites us to see the common connection uniting them all. Stevie is joined by jazz legend Herbie Hancock, and they duet on smooth Fender Rhodes electric keyboards. Their interplay is telepathic, and the rhythm section keeps the momentum humming and the floating keys earthbound. As always, Stevie's vocals are rapturous. However, it's the backup vocals from Mary Lee Whitney and Yolanda Simmons that are sublime, pitch perfect, and heavenly. The lively choir preaches about the end of our collective existence, until dear Mother Nature says her work is through. Comparing the apocalypse with undying dedication, it's a love song both sensual and spiritual. With both his heart and mind wide open, Stevie urges us to change your words into truths and change that truth into love. To keep the faith during hard times by paying it forward. That love will guide us through until the rainbow burns the stars out in the sky. As is a life-affirming hymn, a blessed gift to humanity filled with empathy, grandeur, and soul, and one of the best songs ever created. And now, I'll add 2 more songs that almost made the list. You'll be unsurprised that both are from Songs in the Key of Life. Showing how amazing Stevie Wonder's catalog is, I Wish just barely missed the top 10. I'm sure for many, it's an easy top 5. I Wish puts the fun in funk. It's a total blast. Stevie said that after a Motown summer picnic, he went into the studio later that day with this carefree, sunny vibe in mind. It's a blast of warm nostalgia, as Stevie reminisces about his childhood and getting into trouble with rose-tinted glasses. The arrangement swings like the best of his big band heroes, with a bold, brash, and funky low end. The other to nearly make the list is Isn't She Lovely? Stevie wrote this celebrating the birth of his daughter, and its genuine joy is apparent in his effervescent vocals and the song's simple and gorgeous melody. Stevie refused to cut down the over 6-minute song to fit onto a 45. Radio stations went ahead and played the full album version anyway. It's another song where Stevie plays nearly all the instruments, imparting his fatherly affection and pride in every note. It's a modern standard for a reason. It's a pure and natural love song. Finally, let's talk about what I consider to be the most overrated song by Stevie Wonder. And that is I Just Called to Say I Love You. By some measures, his biggest hit. I talked earlier about how hard it is to write a happy song that doesn't sound a little corny. Well, I Just Called to Say I Love You is 100% cornball. So broad, it's no wonder it was part of a soundtrack for a Hollywood comedy. Stevie had set the bar so high with his ecstatic, complex arrangements. I Just Called to Say I Love You sways unhurriedly on nearly the same simple progression for over 6 minutes. For the man who wrote Lately only 4 years prior, the lyrics are pretty plain, and they match the chipper 80s computer bloops to decorate a song that's more style than substance. After 4 minutes, it makes total sense to wrap up the song, but instead, he decides he can't get enough of the on hold with customer service groove and sings the first 2 verses and chorus over again through the robo voice setting on a vocoder. And still feeling it, decides to bring back the chorus one final time. I Just Called to Say I Love You is like a Hallmark card made into a Hallmark movie. It's cheesy, paper thin, and stretched longer than it really needs to be. For an artist as incredible as Stevie Wonder, it's his most overrated song. As you're still watching, I wanted to share a deep cut as well. For that, I'm shining a light on Frontline, a single added to Original Musicarium. It's a hard-rocking jam sung from the point of view of an ex-soldier who went to Vietnam as a teenager only to get his legs shot off, and ask how he went from being on the front line in the war to the back of the line in his home country. Stevie sings the anti-war cautionary tale with appropriate, fiery passion, and his keyline is so filthy you might find yourself doing some air keyboard. It's a killer track, and if you haven't had a listen, you should definitely check it out. So there you have it. That was undeniably the top 10 best Stevie Wonder songs. So, how wrong was I? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your top 3? Do you think I Just Called to Say I Love You is one of his best? Let me know. And if there's any artists you'd like to see me rank, let me know in the comments below. Hope you stick around, and thank you for watching. Long intro. While he nope. While he wrote it, Stevie nope. Synthesizer, nope. Leads him on a disastrous, nope. Anti-war cautionary tale, anti-war cautionary tale. Oh, that's not quite correct. I made it work, but I'm just like, that's not right.